Shalom, everybody.
Hi. Hi, Sue.
Hi.
How we all doing? It's good to see everybody here for our third week of unlocking ourselves, unlocking engagement. It's going to be, I think, a really wonderful, time together. A really fun experience. We're going to do a little dancing, a little studying. It's going to be, again, it's going to be great. And so I'm just going to try to see if anyone else is popping on. Looks good right now. Here we go. Someone else is in the waiting room. Multitasking. Okay. So what we're going to do first, before we get to the dance, it's going to be happening pretty shortly. I just want to share with you something that we're going to be taking a look at a little later on in our program, which is a text from, there we go, Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav. It's actually an adaptation of one of his texts. And you might know the song a little bit more if you haven't heard the expression. Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tsar me'od, v'ha'ikar lo lefached klal. The whole world is a very narrow bridge. The main thing is not to be afraid. So this is a musical adaptation of his words, and it's a really fascinating quote that speaks about fear and what do we do and how do we confront fear in our lives. But we think it'd be a good quote to speak about later because it has this word gesher. And gesher is a fun Hebrew word, but one of the meanings is bridge itself. And that's going to be our bridge to our musical portion of the program. So we're going to be thinking about this quote. We'll come back to it a little bit later. But now I'm going to actually hand it over to Sue, who is going to have us do a little movement, a little dancing today. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay.
And hand it over to Sue.
Is everybody ready to get up and dance? We won't move too much, but oh, come on, Nina.
Why not?
Does anybody want to learn to dance?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to get right into it because it's a whole 60 seconds of dancing. Okay. Easy choreography, lots of fun. So if everybody can get up and make sure you can see me. Okay, beginning part real easy. It's the intro, and all we're gonna do is step, touch, step, touch, step, touch, step, touch. Easy, right? Yeah. And then we're gonna go out, 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 out. Okay, so from the top, it's step, touch, step, touch, step, touch, step, touch, out, 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 shoulder, 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 shoulder. Yes? Okay. Yes. Okay, let's do it again. Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, from there, you're going to take your hand, you're going to touch your shoulder, you're going to bring it to the other shoulder and go down. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, then roll like this, and then open and like you're serving a platter. Okay, yes?
Yes.
Okay, start from the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. Shoulder 5, 6, 7, 8. Touch, touch, down, roll, and serve. Okay, you want to try that with the music?
Yes.
Yes, that's what we'll do. We'll keep breaking it down.
Yes.
Can you hear the music? Okay, we'll just march in place. Okay, hold on, because we didn't start. Okay, we're gonna do that again. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, shoulder, 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 shoulder. Okay. So far, so good? Okay, so after you serve the platter, you're gonna go where you landed with your platter and you're gonna shimmy down. Just shimmy, okay? And then big around the world, big arms, and then bring one hand up like you're pointing to someone and the other hand up like you're pointing to someone. So both fingers pointing, okay? From there, you go step, look, step, look, step, look, step, look. Okay, from the top with music. So far, so good, everyone? Okay.
I can't see the rabbi.
I was thinking the same
I
thing.
never could figure out how to do a shimmy.
Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, out, out, shoulder, 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 in, touch, touch, down, roll, serve, shimmy, big circle, and point to you. Look, 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 look. Okay, can we move on? I wish I could see everyone and I can't, but you could see me, yes? Okay, so after you step, look, 1, 2, 3, 4, we're gonna get a little fancy and we're gonna step, touch, step, snap. Okay, it's just a turn. So after you look, 1, 2, 3, 4, just step, turn, step, here. And then who knows how to do a grapevine, because that's what we're doing. You step, back, step, kick, ball, change. Okay? All right, from the top. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, out, 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 shoulder, 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 in, down, roll, and serve, and shimmy, and big world, and point, and step, look, step, look, step, look, step, look, step, turn, step, down, step, back, side, kick, ball, change. Okay? With music, here we go. I wish we were in person. This would be so much more fun. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Step up. Out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Shoulder. Big world. Okay, step, look. Turn. Grapevine. Kickball change. How's everybody doing? Good? Okay, after you do kickball change, you're gonna just take your foot in front and back and front and side and switch the other way and side. I promise we're almost done, okay? From the top, okay. Ready? Step, touch, step, touch, step, touch, step, touch, and out, out, out. Shoulder, shoulder, shoulder. Arm, arm, down, and roll, and serve, and shimmy. Big world. Point, point, step, look, step, look, step, look, step, look, and step, turn, step, here, grapevine, step, back, side, kick, ball change, front, back, front, out, front, back, front, out. Okay, with the music. We're almost to the chorus. Step up. Step out. Shoulder. And roll. Curve. Spin. Big whirl. Point. Okay, we're gonna look. Turn. Grapevine. Kickboxing. Front, back, front. Back, front. Just showing you a little preview. Okay, does everybody have that? Okay, so after you do kick, ball change, front, back, front, step, front, back, front, step. You throw, you throw, you throw, you throw like you're throwing it over the bridge. And hip, 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 hip. And throw, and throw, and throw, and throw. And hip, 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 hip. And out and in, and out and in, and walk over the bridge. Done. That's it. Okay? With music from the top. Here we go. Okay, step touch. Step out. Shoulder. Roll. Curve. Spinning. Big whirl. Point. Okay, look. Turn. Grapevine. Kickboxing. Front, back, front. Front, back, front. Go, 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 go. Hip. Throw. Hip. Out, out, and walk over the bridge. Okay. That is the whole dance. Can we do it again? One more time? Okay, here we go. Whoops. Hold on, I just lost the whole thing. Step up. Step out. Shoulder. And roll. And serve. And shimmy. And roll. Point. Step touch. And turn. Grapevine. Kickboxing. Out, back. Throw. Throw it over the bridge. Out, 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 and walk over the bridge. Good job. Okay, now Rabbi's going to do it all for us.
Are we recording?
Rabbi, did you do it? I didn't get to see you.
He's muted.
Yes, there we go. Yes, I was dancing along with the screen "Give It to Take It Away," but I was doing my best not to injure myself for the holidays.
All right.
That was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. I
I was good with the rolling. I could roll.
You could roll?
I could roll.
Oh, do a
I had that.
rolls. Okay.
Little less of the ball chain, but I had the roll.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. I got to go.
Thank you,
feed my cat.
Sue.
Bye.
Thank you, Sue.
Oh, my pleasure. I'll do it again. I can't wait to do it in person.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Okay. Bye.
Really
Bye.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Not trying to even move forward from that. That was, fantastic. Don't know if I can match that. Not gonna try. But that was wonderful. Hold on for 1 second. I'm just gonna play with the Zoom a little bit. Okay, that's better. Yeah, my goodness, get a little workout. A little movement, a little dancing. It really is fantastic, and I think Danny can speak to it better than I could, but there are so many different modalities, different ways of learning, and there's this kinetic learning that when we match our bodies to sound and rhythm, it could just help us open up in different ways. And so that was really a lot of fun and a good way, I think, to show how we can engage, in different things. You might be thinking, well, what did all that have to do with the high holidays and with learning and with Torah and all that other good stuff? Well, hopefully you caught the song. I know it was a little bit hard, but Simon and Garfunkel, not their song, not their version of it, right? But that was Bridge Over Troubled Waters. And so that was a more disco upbeat version of it than Simon and Garfunkel's original. And we like that idea, talking about the bridge, because that really fit in with our topic for this evening, which has to do with what's our bridge? How do we create a bridge to move from where we are to where we would like to be? Which is a theme of the high holidays, is how do we go from where we are as a person, as an individual, as a Jewish person, as a citizen of the world, to where we want to be in the next year. And one of the things that I think stops us often from attaining our goals is fear. And so I'm picturing in this metaphor fear being what's beneath the bridge, right? And so we're trying to create that bridge to go from one side to the other side. What is our bridge? That's what I want us to think about today. What are the things that we hang on to, that we rely upon, that help us move from one side of the bridge where there might be uncertainty and doubt or even just potential, to the other side of the bridge where there is actualization, there's fulfillment, there is meaning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share that saying again. Okay, so Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tsar me'od v'ha'ikar lo lefached klal. As I mentioned, this is an adaptation of Rabbi Nachman's expression, and this translation, the whole world's a narrow bridge. The main thing is not to be afraid. Rabbi Nachman was a 19th century Hasidic scholar, widely quoted, written some fantastic works. This is one of his most famous, again, expressions, though it isn't, again, an adaptation. What he said was that when a person crosses a bridge, a very narrow bridge, the important thing is not to be frightened. And so somebody else took that quote and changed it and made it a little bit more existential, that the idea of the whole world is a narrow bridge. What do we think of, and you can unmute yourselves a bit if you would like, because that way we can have a little more of a conversation. What does it mean to you when we say the whole world is a narrow bridge?
I think it means that really nothing is guaranteed in life, but you put one foot in front of the other and just don't be fearful.
Mm-hmm. Really good. Thank you for that. Yeah. There's a lot of uncertainty. We have to sort of keep moving forward. Anyone else like to chime in on that one?
We never know what's going to happen as we're going through life, but we have to bend and adapt to whatever we see in our lives.
Very true. Very nice. Exactly. We have to adapt. We have to respond. Yeah.
That we all have our own journey, but we all have a similar, there's similarities in the path. We go through the same things. And so it's a narrow bridge, not to constrict us, but to understand that we are in it together and very possibly have shared experiences.
Very nice. I like that. That's really, really well said.
I think in life, you have to keep moving forward. And even though there are things in front of us that may make us afraid or make us unsure whether we should go over this bridge, the important thing is to keep going forward and not be afraid.
Very nice.
I think it also means we're each performing the same play in life. And each of us has our own stage and our own scenery.
Very nice. And it's not a dress rehearsal.
Yeah.
I had a congregant who always said that to me, that this is not a dress rehearsal. We have one shot at this, so make it good. That's very nice. Very well said.
Rabbi,
Yes, please, Polly.
you know, the fact that it's a narrow bridge, maybe it means that we touch each other more than we think that we do. You know,
Interesting.
that it's so narrow that our lives are intertwined more than we understand. You know how you're in one part of the world, and yet you know there's somebody on the other side of the world that's going through the exact same thing that you are at the same time. So,
so there's a connectedness, that we all share, potentially interconnectedness, as we're all in this narrow bridge together, that we're all sort of fitting on that same bridge. And that we shouldn't be afraid of each other's differences, maybe? Maybe.
Yes.
Maybe. Interesting. That's really good. This quote, the whole world is a narrow bridge. The main thing is not to be afraid. We talked about sort of uncertainty a little bit, about we don't know what's necessarily coming. Is there a particular prayer we could think of perhaps that might encapsulate that idea during the high holy days? That we maybe don't have as much control as we would like, and that things are more tenuous, things are maybe a little bit more uncertain, things may be a little bit more out of our hands than perhaps we would like. Stumped you guys so far. We'll see. It's a biggie. It's one of the, I guess, 3 or 4 big prayers of the high holiday season that we don't normally say during a Shabbat, right, or something else. And as luck would have it, there it is. The Unatana Tokef, yes. A very haunting, sort of prayer, a prayer that I think strikes to the heart of one of the larger themes of the high holidays, which is our relationship with God and our relationship with life, and not necessarily knowing what's coming next, that we can't predict what's going to happen, and that things can feel tenuous and uncertain for us. Would someone like to give that a read?
Sure. On Rosh Hashanah, this is written. On the fast of Yom Kippur, this is sealed. How many will pass away from this world? How many will be born into it? Who will live and who will die? Who will reach the ripeness of age? Who will be taken before their time? Who by fire and who by water? Who by war and who by beast? who by famine, and who by drought, who by earthquake, and who by plague, who by strangling, and who by stoning, who will rest, and who will wander, who will be tranquil, and who will be troubled, who will be calm, and who tormented, who will live in poverty, and who in prosperity, who will be humbled, and who exalted.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, the Unatana Tokef is a prayer that really, I think, speaks to the heart of the experience of what it means to be human, right? It's our mortality, it's our frailty, which is a blessing and a curse, as we're going to talk about during the high holidays, that we are mortal, therefore, you know, we are under control of everything that happens to us. But we also have a response as well, right? We also have the ability to respond to what's happening in our lives. And maybe that is the ikar, maybe that is the important thing, that things might be uncertain, things might be fearful at times, and we can't necessarily control that, but we have a response. And that we can control more so, you know, I think, than other things. How many of us have felt a little bit of uncertainty in the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 months or so?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes, indeed, right? You know, this prayer, when I look at it, you know, who by plague is a very different meaning than it did last year.
Last year.
Yeah. So when I look at this prayer, I think about how we don't necessarily know what's going to happen, right? We don't have that down. There's only so much that we can really control our destiny when it comes to these things. But we have the coda, you know, of the prayer, right? Teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah, right? They temper the decree that through prayer, through righteous giving, and through repentance, right, that we have some control over our fate, over our lives. And so in its way, those three things, prayer, repentance, and a righteous giving, that's sort of the bridge, right, of the Unatana Tokef. That is the bridge that gets us over the troubled waters of being fearful, perhaps, about what is in store for us, what is written in our book of life, what's going to be sealed, what is our year going to look like, and what can possibly happen to us during this year. And so going back then to the bridge, right? So if we can say that at some point in the last 3 to 5 months, if not more, depending on, I guess, how we're feeling, I would like to hazard a guess that perhaps we've all felt a little bit fearful, a little bit afraid, a little bit helpless in a way. What are some of the things that have helped us individually and as a community feel better, to feel more grounded, to feel like we can walk this narrow bridge of life a little less troubled? You know, what has been our help to help us through this time?
Hydroxychloroquine. Just kidding.
Drinking bleach. Yeah. What else?
But meditation.
Our connection with each other.
Our connection with each other, yep.
Meditation.
Yes.
Meditation.
Mhm.
I see walking outside and golf and the community. Very nice. Anything else helps stabilize us? Ooh, another one in the chat.
Family.
Faith and family, yep. Learning new dances.
Yeah.
The rain, that's an interesting one.
Yes.
A reason to be, making meaning. There we go. Yeah, I could tell that one, yes.
Is that Danny's?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
It is. I knew that.
Yes. Surprised no one put wine in the chat box yet. So
I was going to say alcohol, but I wasn't sure.
no, you're good. You are good on that one. Oh my goodness. Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Polly.
You're welcome.
That's a sunrise and sunset. I thought a fiddler on the roof all of a sudden, but yeah, sunrise and sunset. Zooming, of course, with that. So we have all these different ways, right, of coping, these different ways of feeling connected and also feeling, again, a little bit more sure of our footing. Because there are some days when we're on that narrow bridge and the wind is blowing pretty hard, and we're feeling a little shaky. And it's in those moments, I think, when we find our coping mechanisms, we find, the things that help us persevere. It gets us through these challenging moments because, this one in particular is new. This is a curveball for us, so what we've been dealing with now. But it's not like life before. It was always easy either and without questions or challenges, which is why, again, I looked at Unatana Tokef piece and I just think, sort of reading this, it's really the first time when I've read this that, Who by Plague has really sort of resonated in a different way than in other years. Sometimes, God forbid, somewhere else there might be an earthquake, there might be, a flood. There might be something like, when I was in Houston and we had Hurricane Harvey, and no stranger in this area, certainly to the hurricanes, Who by Water becomes a little bit more pressing. Than other places, but certainly Who by Plague, that's a new one, I think, for me, to really be thinking about in a different way. But I love the idea that we are all finding different ways to create for us a sense of community, a sense of coping, a sense of perseverance and resiliency, and an idea of gratitude. Thank you, Sharon. Gratitude, really important, right? It's to be grateful for the blessings that we do share can really help us, during some of our difficult moments. So I wanted to see, Danny, you wanted to chime in a little bit? When you're feeling good.
Yes, you actually, you took some of the words. I think it was interesting. Has anybody read Bridge Over Troubled Waters before the song? Rabbi, can you go back a slide as well?
Yeah, sure.
Because you chose an interesting word that I want to see if anybody picked up on. So has anybody either seen this or heard the song before? If you have kids that maybe grew up in Nifty or went to camp, what word could we trade out for afraid? What's a word? Rabbi and I had this conversation earlier and it was very interesting. What word could you trade out for afraid?
Alone.
Alone. Okay. What else? There's no right or wrong answer. What else could the word afraid be?
Scared.
Uncomfortable.
Oh, uncomfortable. There was one before that I didn't quite hear. So I heard alone. I heard uncomfortable.
Scared.
Scared.
Anxious.
Right.
Anxious.
Anxious. Okay. What else? There's one I haven't heard yet that I think of, and it's so fascinating to me. The therapist in me wants to explore this. Anxious, alone, scared. What else? Can you think of any other words?
Fearful?
Fearful. Sure, fearful. Anything else? If I were to say to you, the whole world is a very narrow bridge, and the main thing is not to be fearful. Does that change the meaning of this song or the saying from the rat? It's not really a song. I know it is a song, but does that change the implication for you?
A little.
Mad, good.
Not to be mad. Mhm.
The whole world is a very narrow bridge, and the main thing is not to be fearful, as opposed to the whole world is a very narrow bridge, and the main thing is not to be afraid.
Well, one might imply that there's action, even though there's fear, there might be action. And the other might imply that one would be frozen and kept from action.
Interesting. I love that. Anybody else? What if I substituted some of your other words? The whole world is a very narrow bridge, and the main thing is not to be anxious.
To me, it's a much more internal, it's kind of an internal response. And for me, at least I hear it as more of an internal, just not to be afraid, which I think is something that approaches us externally, as opposed to something that is more internal, like the anxiety and the things that we come.
Can I pick on you for a minute, Sandy? Because that was great.
Yeah, sure.
Which is easier, and maybe everybody just quickly put in the chat, is it easier to connect with the word afraid or connect with the word fearful or anxious or scared or some of the other words that you threw out there?
Which is easier, did you say, or harder?
Yeah, which is easier?
For, in my thinking, I think it's more to be afraid, because it's on us. It's something that we take on us, as opposed to what's inside of us that we may or may not want to go and explore what that's about.
Interesting.
Just going over that bridge.
Sure. Anybody else have a thought on that? Which is easier to connect with, the word afraid or the word fearful or anxious? Or I'm looking at some of the others that have come up in the chat. Which word is easier to connect with? It's the high holidays, folks. We dig deep.
Anxious.
Anxious is easier. Okay, why?
To me, if I'm feeling anxious about something, I know I have tools to get rid of that anxiety. When I'm afraid, it's harder to go back without thinking about why am I afraid? Where does this lead me to? But anxious, I can get rid of. Anxiety, I can get rid of.
Interesting.
Fearful is so much bigger. It's like a much bigger concept. Afraid is kind of basic. It's either a particular situation or a thing that you think could hurt you, whether it's physically or spiritually. Whereas fearful is a much vaguer concept. It's harder to connect with, and it implies a larger a kind of a larger problem.
Okay.
I was just thinking the other thing. I was thinking fearful, it's something very specific. I am afraid of the water, or I'm afraid of the beast that's there, where if I'm afraid, I don't know what I'm afraid of.
Yeah, I think, to me, afraid is more nebulous. And it's kind of like, if you're afraid of things, you can have all sorts of responses to that. One could be anxiety, one could be fear. But I think, the anxiety is more apprehension, more specific.
Okay, any other thoughts? Rabbi, is the Hebrew word actually translated to afraid? Is that the actual translation? Do you know? I know I'm picking on your Hebrew a little.
No, I'm trying to think, because here it's the the infinitive of it. So it is, to not be afraid. It's actually interesting in the Rabbi Nachman quote, the actual quote, it's yitpached, which is a reflexive. So it's to not let oneself be fearful, as opposed to the fached, which is to not fear or to not be afraid. So the Reb Nachman's a little bit more internalized than this one is.
Do you want baked potato?
Absolutely. Any
That's
thoughts on
really
That's
interesting.
what I think about with afraid versus fearful. I feel like afraid for me is I might be afraid of heights, but I might not be afraid of spiders. I'm actually not a big fan of either. But in the spirit of honesty, but heights and spiders. I mean, I might be afraid of them, but fearful to me feels more like a internal characteristic, an internal quality that I am generally fearful of. Of the world, of what else is out there. That feels more like a trait to me, whereas afraid to me feels like based on circumstance.
It's interesting that you point out the difference in the translation, because the one where you said to not allow yourself to be fearful is very different from simply being afraid, because it's almost as if you could be afraid of the thing, but you are not going to allow yourself to show it, which is different from I'm not going to be afraid of it. We are human. We still have the fear, but we sometimes have to rise above or beyond or beside it. And so it's a very different portrayal when you change it to the infinitive and talk about allowing yourself to be afraid, meaning allowing yourself to feel the fear or allowing yourself to show the fear. Those are two very different things. And I keep hearing Julie Andrews. I guess we have to whistle a happy tune.
Well, and Barbara, that's actually one of the reasons I asked Rabbi to point it out, because often in Hebrew, in Judaism, when we're studying prayers with our youth, right, as they're starting to learn the prayer, I think it's interesting when we look at the way it was meant to be said or the way it was written versus the way sometimes we interpret it. And again, if you think about this time of year, we're in the month of Elul, which is about preparing and getting ready for the high holidays, and how powerful words can be. Rabbi, can you flip back to the Unatana Tokef for a minute?
I will flip back. I want to add one more thing,
please,
about this, is that Rabbi Nachman, was a transcendent scholar. His works are widely read and widely studied. But one thing I wanted to mention, because I think it gives a little bit more insight into the quote itself, the original, is that Rabbi Nachman very publicly suffered with depression and very publicly suffered with anxiety, issues throughout his life. And so when I think about this quote about not letting yourself be fearful, like he wasn't being Pollyanna-ish, in his way. He wasn't trying to brush things off or make it seem lighter. He understood that it was a struggle. To not let yourself be afraid, not let yourself be fearful, not let yourself he understood that in the face of challenge that it was hard. But I think that he wanted to give, in his words, the remarks, encouragement, I think, for those who might struggle with issues of fear. That's one thing I just wanted to throw in. Okay.
So the reason I ask you to turn back is, as we think about this high holidays, and I want to also tie it back into having Sue start Unlock Engagement with a dance, many of the words we see are going to be on the screen this high holidays, right, in a format similar to this. And you have an opportunity to actually look at the words and kind of ponder with what was the intention behind them. And so is there any words, now that we've had this conversation about afraid versus fearful versus anxiety, is there any words, as we're looking at the Unatana Tokef, that stand out for you that maybe if we were to look at the Hebrew, you might wonder if they were intended differently?
Tormented.
Okay, what about it? What about tormented stood out for you?
Well, to me, that's, you're going through life. Don't Not as bad as you think it is. Don't be tormented.
Okay, great.
But humbled is another word, but I don't think it goes along with fear.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other words? Obviously, these are they're meant to be opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Who will be tranquil? Who will be troubled? We all know this prayer to some extent. Before I ask Rabbi to pick on his Hebrew again, any other thoughts on the words?
I wonder if what they're referring to with who will live in poverty and who in prosperity, not necessarily monetarily.
Mhm.
It's interesting that there's two versions of the one line. There's tranquil and troubled and calm and tormented. They're very different words, but at first glance, it looks like a similar concept, whereas all the other ones are very, very different concepts. But then you think, why were those written that way? And is that actually how the words translate? But what is the difference between tranquil and troubled and calm and tormented? It's an interesting juxtaposition.
How about internal versus external?
External. I was gonna say two
No,
pounds.
just like we had, yeah. Boy.
So, just out of curiosity, has anybody ever read this prayer before? Yeah, you've been to services on the high holidays, right? Have you ever taken time to actually look at the words?
Yeah.
I have.
A few times.
So every year, a different piece of this, a different word has more meaning to me. Like
Interesting.
when we had services right after 9/11, you know, the fire jumped out at me. And
Mhm.
every year it's a different one that kind of,
Yeah.
I re-see.
Mhm.
That's
I'm
great.
changing my mind.
And just,
Okay.
and just what
Maybe
is
the
likely
word
to
we're
be
looking for is troubled. Don't be troubled. The world is a narrow
Okay.
bridge. You know, don't be troubled. Just keep going.
Yeah.
I like that.
I sometimes think that God is saying you can be on either side, whether it's the good or the bad, and you have your chance to decide where you're going to really fit in over the year. Not as, God is not saying I'm going to punish you and you're going to be on the list that's going to die. He's saying you have a choice of living or dying, of
Choose
doing
life.
things and being. So you as an individual can control where you're going to be in this book of
Choose
life.
life.
It's great.
To an
I love that
extent.
interpretation to an extent. So how many people actually got up and danced? Rabbi, I don't know if you want to go back so we can see everybody on the same page for a minute.
Okay, hold on for a second.
Two hands up.
Ooh.
How many- So the reason we started with dance, very honestly, is how many people actually dance on Zoom often? Do you get up and dance for people often on Zoom?
Once.
Once.
No.
Once. So as we were thinking about this idea of engaging in the high holidays, right, and pushing ourselves and doing something outside of our comfort zone, or for some of us, maybe it's inside our comfort zone, right? Moving your body makes your brain work differently. I'm not a neurosurgeon, although that might be a fun profession. But I think if we were to study the way our brain works when we move our body versus when we don't, we interact with things differently. And so looking at words after moving our body and interacting, even though you might not have heard the words to Bridge Over Troubled Waters, that was what was playing. It was the dance version of Bridge Over Troubled Waters. It was an opportunity to do something different, which I believe as an educator then also allowed you to look at a prayer that you've seen potentially dozens and dozens of times differently. Rabbi, any final rabbinic words of wisdom?
I think that the Unatana Tokef is the most challenging prayer in our liturgy because I think it speaks to the greatest, again, of our fears, that we are not in control, that I think for so many of us that is so important that we would like to be in control and we'd like to sort of have things our way. And that prayer is a reminder it doesn't always work that way. And it makes some of our other fears perhaps feel a little smaller, like dancing on camera. Make that fear feel a little bit less when we're worried about the grander scheme, right, of life. But I think the message of the holidays, and one you just might hear in a sermon, is the idea that we do have some measure of control over our lives and over our fate. There are some things that are out of our hands. We can't deal with it. There's some things we don't, and if we try, it's not going to avail us anything. But rather than worry about those and be fearful of those things, then perhaps we should focus a little bit more on things that we can control and what is our response, again, to these challenges. And maybe some interpretive dance.
And maybe some interpretive dance, exactly. Well, thanks for playing. Thanks for putting yourself out there. I think that's what makes unlocking the holidays so engaging.
I agree.
And we don't move enough. We don't move enough in isolation.
Also true.
Well, Sue said she'd come back and do it anytime. So maybe we have a dance class on Zoom in our future.
Yes.
Good.
Or maybe Polly will lead one next.
I was going to say, as if we can do a little Macarena.
There you go.
Do that.
Well, Erev Tov, everyone. Thank you. Also, if you've not signed up for Drive-Thru Slichot on Saturday, there are still some openings to come see, I don't know, live animals and drive-through chuppahs, and you just never know.
And that's where you're collecting the food?
Yes, we'll be collecting food as well. Absolutely.
Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah, so
Thanks,
4:30.